We've just come off the back, some of you were at it, I know, the back of 2 days of low-cost airlines in North Asia, which 5 or 6 years ago would have been a very brief conversation. But of course things have changed a lot this year. And I think are going to change a lot more. You're all aware, of course, that yesterday, finally, Qantas and Emirates made the announcement about their very, very deep relationship. I was even a little bit surprised at just how potentially deep that relationship is proposed to be, with essentially it looks like a metal neutral relationship, a whole very similar to the British Airways relationship that Qantas has had for many years. And of course that British Airways Qantas relationship has terminated as a result of that, which I think in turn will hasten the arrival of a British Airways Qatar Airways relationship. So we're looking, when we look at it from this perspective in North Asia, with the very sudden arrival this year of low-cost airlines in Japan, even though they are all partial subsidiaries of the incumbent full-service carriers. And then the impact, and I don't think that JAL or Nippon fully recognise the impact that those carriers are going to have in their market, but I'm pretty sure over the next 2 or 3 years it will be dramatic. And with the combination of that with the Qantas Emirates, or more appropriately the Emirates Qantas arrangement, which does perhaps open the door for other Emirates relationships like that, so that Emirates actually becomes a major alliance in its own right. I think we'll perhaps look back on 2012 and say this really was a major turning point in global aviation, because that shift there is really going to shake the foundations of the evolution of the global alliances, the Star Alliance in particular. And it'll be interesting to see what the Chinese do and what sort of relationships are established there. But from the particular point of view of the conference of the last couple of days, it really is this issue of seeing the potential for enormous growth in this northeast corner of Asia, where we have such massive population, such rapid growth in economic ability to fly, and given the arrival of a number of low-cost carriers, not just with low fares, but the very fact of having a whole lot of new entry is really going to rock the foundations of the way things work here. China has yet to embrace the concept of low-cost carriers fully, although Spring, I think, is probably one of the more aggressive ones operating internationally. And it was interesting yesterday too with the Koreans, who have been probably more advanced in developing the low-cost, particularly low-cost subsidiaries, but also 1 or 2 independent low-cost operations. The concern, almost unanimously, that they expressed about the big foreign low-cost airlines coming into their markets and just how they're going to respond to them. And I think that was a real statement of just how powerful now in the overall context AirAsia and Jetstar, particularly, and Tiger to a lesser extent, are becoming in this regional market. And that leads me into the sort of theme that we're going to be pursuing over the rest of today, I think. The real purchasing, the real orders in this region, and there are over 1,000 of them for narrow bodies, just from low-cost airlines alone, is a real indication of this major shift, but both in the industry, but obviously for the finance sector, the sort of attitudes and processes and infrastructure that's going to have to be put in place to cater for a whole new type of industry profile, really. That's the thing that's happening. And in that process, as I mentioned before, with JAL and All Nippon. Just the extent to which JAL and All Nippon actually understand what the impact is likely to be of having those low-cost carriers in the market. And we've estimated, and our guess is as good as anybody's, probably not as good as anybody's, but the likelihood of there being probably 50% of passengers flying on low-cost carriers in Japan by the end of this decade, and maybe well before, means massive changes to the profile and to the nature, the adaptability of All Nippon and JAL. Because we were looking at some yields yesterday from some of the data that we have, and for example, I think it's at Osaka to Tokyo. The yields on that route over the last few months have been around 70 cents per ASK, and that's a remarkably high yield. And we've seen, as the low-cost carriers have come into the market, some dramatically lower priced anyway, even if they aren't much lower cost in terms of the operation. But I suspect they are considerably lower cost. So that's sort of the sort of differentials we're seeing there, sort of 1 to 4, 1 to 5 in pricing. The rapid change in behaviour of passengers who are now prepared to fly to Seoul to go shopping for the day, which was unthinkable even just a few months ago. That's going to shift things very greatly. And as a result, there's going to be a real shift in the way the full-service carriers operate. We've already seen this year Singapore Airlines making losses. CAPA is having to change its model substantially. It's changing its in-cabin profile anyway, much greater accent on the middle part of the cabin, the premium economy, where business is perhaps not quite so strong anymore. And if we look at the finance sector, of course, the traditional markets of Europe and North America, which are undergoing real turmoil at the moment and great uncertainty. We just don't know what's going to happen in Europe. Nobody really knows. Well, I think probably most of you would have some expectation that Greece is going to default sooner or later, and the real issue is about prolonging that evil day as long as possible so that we can adapt to the market. But in the meantime, and then beyond that, there is still a great risk averseness right across the financial sector. And that's making it very difficult to raise funds. When you even see it in Australia, where we're going pretty well. The risk averseness of banks right across the spectrum has become much, much greater. And for aviation, that's particularly important because those have been the markets we've relied on to fund airline development and airport development to some extent. And so we've got these two major events in confluence, the whole shift in profile of the Asian aviation industry at the same time as we've got a real uncertainty in the markets about financing any type of aviation activity, let alone a new type which is unfamiliar territory for Europeans and Americans. What can we do to help rectify that? How can we create the right infrastructure in this part of the world? And that's, I think, one of the key issues we'd like to get after today, but of course there are a lot of other fairly pressing issues as well, at a time when on the one side we have enormous demand, pent-up demand, and on the other side we have a reluctance to, or inability, whichever, to finance the growth that's needed to meet that demand. So that's all I have to say to start things off. And I'm going to take a back seat, fortunately. But I'd like to introduce to you the moderator for our first session, which is the Capital Highway, sourcing capital to support the Asian aviation revolution. We call it a revolution, and I think it probably is a reasonably accurate description of what's going on and what's about to happen. So if I could